Hi everyone, for the author, illustrator, and poet assignment, I chose John Green, who is a young adult author, and he has written a lot of books that have affected teens and maybe some younger kids, such as The Fault in Our Stars, Paper Towns, An Abundance of Catherines, and Looking at Alaska. He is well known for that, as well as being somebody who is a huge YouTube star and actually creates a lot of videos that are informational for students going through high school, college, anything of that sort, as well as Mental Floss, which is just random facts that he states on a daily basis. John Green was born on August 24th of 1977 in Indianapolis, Indiana. He graduated from the Kenyon College with a degree in both English and in religious studies. He first wanted to be a priest, but then after working as a chaplain in a children's hospital, he realized that he wanted to become a writer. From there, he became a critique, and while he was critiquing some articles and books, he also started writing Looking for Alaska, which was published in 2005. It was one of his biggest hits and is still read by many to this day. It's a small love story that talks a little bit of what it's like to be a different person and be able to still find love. It's very great, and he relates to it very, very deeply. In 2006, he published An Abundance of Catherines, which ended up being a major success only a year after he had published Looking for Alaska. In 2012, he published The Fault in Our Stars, which became the highest grossing book that year and ended up being a major motion picture, as well as his other book, Paper Towns, that ended up being a major motion picture as well. They were beautifully directed, and he had a lot of input in what went into those movies. They're very good. They hit in the feels of most young people. They're able to relate to it, and they're able to understand just what John meant when he was writing these things. He not only is for young adults, but I do believe he's for the more mature, younger audience. He could hit somewhere between the 4th and the 5th grade because they're learning larger vocabulary. They're wanting to start to understand some of a little bit more of the seriousness of life. And he does tackle those issues in a very, very professional way. He's able to just tackle those issues with such grace, and he puts light and humor and a beautifulness into what he means with those books. He gained a lot of what he put into The Fault in Our Stars by working in a children's hospital. He worked with kids who were terminally ill, which was his inspiration for The Fault in Our Stars, which is actually about a young girl who has cancer and is just ready to kind of end her life, but actually falls in love with a guy who also has had cancer in the past. There's a major plot twist that takes most of the audience by surprise, but it's beautifully written and it's a tearjerker for sure. Some of his books do tackle some very rough subjects, and because of that, it's hard to recommend these to younger children, but at the same time, reading it through literature might be the easiest way for them to hear that kind of information. So being able to read those instead of being told that information may be easier received. He is known for a couple of awards, such as the Michael L. Prince Award in 2006 and 2007 for both Looking at Alaska and An Abundance of Catherine. He won the Edgar Allan Poe Award in 2009 for Paper Towns. He won the Corinne Literature Prize in 2010 for Paper Towns. He won the Children's Choice Book Awards in 2013 for The Fault in Our Stars, which ended up being one of his biggest awards. He also won the Indian Author Awards in 2012, Los Angeles Times Book Prize in 2013, and the MTV U Fandom Awards in 2014. Those awards aren't tied to specific books, but they are something he was honored for, and people picked him for that, obviously. Just some random facts about him. He runs his own YouTube channel with many videos, including Crash Course and Mental Floss. Both are educational and connects him to a different audience. He has a younger brother named Hank who is constantly in his YouTube videos with him. He's married to a wife named Sarah Urist in 2006, and they now have 2 kids together, Henry and Alice. I do actually have 3 of John Green's books on hand. I have An Abundance of Catherines, Looking for Alaska, and Paper Towns. Paper Towns is the book that I chose because it has one of my favorite quotes in it, which is, "What a treacherous thing to believe a person is more than a person." And I'm going to read chapter 3 of that to you. The thing about Margaret Ross Spiegelman is that really all I could ever do was let her talk, and then when she stopped talking, encourage her to go on, due to the facts that 1, I was inconsistently in love with her, 2, she was absolutely unpresented in every way, And 3, she never really asked me any questions, so the only way to avoid silence was to keep her talking. And so in the parking lot of Publix, she said, so right, I made you a list, and if you have any questions, you just call my cell. Listen, that reminds me, I took the liberty of putting some supplies in the back of the van earlier. What, like before I agreed to all this? Well, yes, technically, yes. Anyways, just call me if you have any questions, but with the Vaseline, you want the one that's a bigger than your fist. That's like the baby Vaseline. There's the mommy Vaseline, and then there's the big fat daddy of Vaseline, and that's the one you want. If they don't have that, get 3 of the mommies. She handed me the list and a $100 bill and said that should cover it. Margot's list included 3 whole catfish wrapped separately. Veet, it's for shaving your legs, only you don't need a razor. It's with all the girly cosmetic stuff. Vaseline, a 6-pack of Mountain Dew, 1 dozen tulips, 1 bottle of water, tissues, and a can of blue spray paint. Interesting capitalization, I said. Yeah, I'm a big believer in random capitalization. The rules of capitalization are so unfair to the words in the middle. Now, I'm not sure what you're supposed to say about the checkout woman at 12:30 in the morning when you have 13 pounds of catfish, Veet the fat daddy-sized tub of Vaseline, a 6-pack of Mountain Dew, a can of blue spray paint, and a dozen tulips on the conveyor belt. But here's what I said. This isn't as weird as it looks. The woman cleared her throat, but didn't look up. Still weird, she muttered. I really don't want to get into any trouble, I told Margot in the minivan as she used the bottled water to wipe the black paint off of her face with tissues. She'd only needed the makeup apparently to get out of the house. In my admission letter to Duke, it actually explicitly says that they won't take me if I get arrested. You're a very anxious person, Q. Let's just please not get in any trouble, I said. I mean, I want to have fun and everything, but not at the expense of my future. She looked up at me, her face mostly revealed now, and she smiled just the littlest bit. It amazes me that you can all find this stuff remotely interesting. Huh? College, getting in or not getting in. Trouble, getting in or not getting it in. School, getting A's or getting D's. Career, having or not having. House, big or small. Owning or renting. Money, having or not having. It's all so boring. I started to say something to say that she obviously cared a little because she had good grades and she was going to the University of Florida's honors program next year, but she just said Walmart. We entered Walmart together and picked up the one thing the information called the club, which locks the car's steering wheel into place. As we walked through the juniors department, I asked Margot, why do we need the club? Margot managed to speak in her usual manic soliloquy without answering my question. Did you know that for pretty much the entire history of the human species, the average lifespan was less than 30 years? You could count one on 10 years or so of real adulthood, right? There was no planning for retirement. There was no planning for career. There was no planning, no time for planning, no time for a future. But then the lifespans started getting longer and people started having more and more futures. So they spent more time thinking about the future. And now life has become the future. Every moment of our life is lived for the future. You go to high school so you can go to college, so you can get a job, so you can get a nice house, so you can afford to send your kids to college, so they can get a good job, so they can get a nice house, so they can afford to send their kids to college. It felt like Margot was just rambling to avoid the question, so I repeated, so why do we need the club? Margot patted in the middle of my back softly. I mean, obviously this is all going to be revealed to you before the night is over. And then, in building supplies, Margot located an air horn. She took it out of the box and held it up in the air, and I said no. And she said, no what? And I said, no, don't blow the air horn, except when I got to the B and blow, she squeezed on it and let out an excruciatingly loud honk that felt in my head like an auditory equivalent of an aneurysm. And then she said, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. What was that? And I said, stop. And then she did it again. A Walmart employee, just a little bit older than us, walked up and then said, hey, you can't use that in here. And Margot said with seemingly sincerity, sorry, I didn't know that. And the guy said, oh, it's cool, I don't mind actually. And then the conversation seemed over, except the guy could not stop looking at Margot, and honestly I don't blame him because she is hard to stop looking at. And then finally he said, what are you guys up to tonight? And Margot said, not much, you. And he said, I get off at 1 and then I'm going to this bar down on Orange if you want to come, but you'd have to drop your brother off. They're really strict about IDs. Her what? I'm not her brother, I said, looking at the guy's sneakers. And then Margot proceeded to lie. He's actually my cousin, she said. Then she sidled me up, put her hand around my waist so that I could feel each of her fingers taunt my hip bone, and she added, and my lover. The guy just rolled his eyes and walked away, and Margot's hand lingered for a minute, and I took the opportunity to put my arm around her. You really are my favorite cousin, I told her, and she smiled and bumped me softly with her hips spinning out of the embrace. Don't I know it, she said. So that's one of my favorite chapters from this book. It teaches us a little bit about Margot and a little bit about what they're about to do that night. They go on this crazy adventure and then she ends up disappearing. For this, what I was going to have the class do was watch the movie after they had read the novel, and after they would do that, they would actually participate in a Kahoot that I made. The Kahoot has 10 questions, all of which will give an example of something that is happening either in the book or the text, and they will choose whether it is book or text. Kahoot's just a fun platform for children to be on, and they'll have a lot of fun with it, as well as being knowledgeable about their information, so that's great. Altogether, John Green is a really great author, somebody I will continue to read if he puts out more literature, and I hope to be able to put that into my classroom as well. He is great, and I hope that one day he'll be able to influence many others other than myself.